This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. I'm Evan Jansen. The show is live. It's broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube as always, with our whole show available on our YouTube channel on demand for you. Now, the 2-year anniversary of the Marikana massacre will be held this week, and we asked the question if the lives of miners and their families have changed at all during this period. What are your rights if you buy dodgy food at a supermarket here in South Africa after the revelations of a key investigation this week? And we'll look at new permits for Zimbabweans working here in South Africa, as well as the tough questions about depression following the death of Robin Williams this week a bit later on. First, though, Katrine Milan gives us a news update.
Hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrine Milan, and let's take a look at the top stories this morning. A suspect arrested in connection with the kidnapping and death of the 3-year-old Cuban van Wyk is expected to appear on a charge of murder in the Boksburg Magistrates Court either today or tomorrow. Cuban was abducted from his home in the Ramaphosa informal settlement in Reiger Park on Gauteng's East Rand a week ago. His partially burnt body was discovered on a mine dump in the area over the weekend. This meanwhile, the family of 3-year-old Luke Tibbetts, who was shot in the head by a stray bullet while sitting on his mother's lap, says government needs to do more if it's serious about eradicating crime in Westbury, Johannesburg. The toddler's memorial service was held last night.
We need more law enforcement in our communities. We need them to be on every street corner. We need them to raid our houses. They need to be relevant in our communities.
The Farnham Commission of Inquiry continues in Centurion today. More presentations by lawyers and families of the 44 people who died during the August 2012 Marikana unrest will be heard. Yesterday, the families demanded answers over the deaths of their loved ones. This while transformation and the development of mining communities came under the spotlight at the 3rd Mining Lekgotla being held in Midrand. The Lekgotla continues today as African Union Chair Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is expected to address delegates.
The restive mood amongst our key stakeholders, such as workers, communities, and the population where our mines are located, must give us reason to double effort with regard to the transformation project.
Moving to Africa, a second leading Sierra Leone doctor has succumbed to the Ebola epidemic sweeping across West Africa. In Nigeria, a member of the West African regional body ECOWAS has become the 3rd person in Nigeria to die of Ebola fever. The country has reported 8 cases of Ebola, which has so far killed more than 1,000 people across 4 West African countries. Moving to international news, a renewed truce between Israel and Palestinians to temper a 5-week-old war got off to a shaky start this morning, with rockets from Gaza reportedly slamming into Israel and Israel retaliating with airstrikes. There were no reported casualties. The Gaza hostilities have killed more than 1,900 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and 67 on the Israeli side. Then lastly, Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff has declared 3 days of official mourning for presidential candidate Eduardo Campos and 6 crew members after they were killed in a plane crash yesterday. The deaths prompted a wave of mourning across the country, throwing the October election and local financial markets into disarray. Now remember, all these top stories are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Katrina. Today, family members of the 44 people who died during the August 2012 Marikana unrest will continue with their presentations. It was an emotionally charged day at the Farnham Commission of Inquiry yesterday, as many demanded answers over the deaths of their loved ones. During proceedings, 4 people were taken to a nearby hospital to receive medical attention. As proceedings resumed, families described how they watched the Marikana tragedy unfold on television. Now, our producer, Neen Dormel, visited Marikana in the northwest this week to talk to the community 2 years after this unprotected strike that the country will never forget took place. For many, it's been difficult picking up the pieces of their lives since that fateful day in August of 2012. Well, we apologise for playing the wrong clip there. At least that's what I understand. The Marikana Organising Committee has urged South Africans to commemorate the second anniversary of the 16th August tragedy with the dignity it deserves. A member of the committee, Bishop Joe Sioka, says the tragedy should not be in vain. Now, media briefings on a memorandum of understanding between the Rustenburg local municipality and the Royal Bafokeng Nation will be held today to spell out how the socio-economic conditions in the community will be improved. Now, our reporter Sela Tatai is in Rustenburg to follow these events leading to the commemoration rally, over the weekend. Very good morning to you, Sela. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Ivan.
Sela, just give us a quick idea what is happening today as a build-up to the second anniversary of this tragedy over the weekend.
Well, today we are at the Rustenburg Civic Centre here in the Northwest Province, where the provincial government, together with the local municipality and the Royal Bafokeng Nation, will be signing a memorandum of understanding. We are told that this memorandum of understanding is to come with a concerted effort in trying to respond critically so to some of the socio-economic challenges confronting the Platinum Belt. You know that it is not only Marikana where mine workers are living in squalor. You talk of settlements such as Freedom Park, at the operations of Impala, and also at the operations of Amplets, where there is also a dire need for services. So today's memorandum of understanding is based on those on what I've just alluded to respond critically to some of the challenges, socio-economic challenges confronting residents and confronting mine workers in particular on a daily basis.
The community are saying, we spoke to them earlier, and it's a clip that we'll play just now. We found it and we'll play it next, Sela. But they spoke earlier in the week about how they feel they've lost a lot. They've been unable to pick up the pieces after losing family members, and that the wider community there, the lives have not really changed. You've been on the scene for the last couple of years, really. Just give us your idea and your thoughts on this.
Well, it remains a concern, even over and above the demand for better wages, which really started the strike action. The socio-economic conditions of these mine workers, remains a dire need, remains something that governments need to critically respond to, and even stakeholders such as your mining bosses, your platinum mines operating in the area, and obviously the local municipality and your Royal Bafokeng Nation, and also the Babo Bamokhale. 2 years into the massacre, nothing has really changed here. People continue to live in squalor conditions. There are no basic services such as water, electricity, and housing. And to a large extent, we feel largely ignored by government. We feel largely ignored by our employers, in that though we are living in these squalor conditions, they are failing to come to the party and respond to some of the grievances that we have put forward over and above the demand for better wages. But we have it on record that government is going to over 3 billion, and that this will be a partnership between the local government, the Northwest Provincial Government, and Lonmin in a triple P partnership to respond critically so to the need for housing. We are told that more than 2,000 housing units will be built here at a cost of over 3 billion. And that will also create economic opportunities for the locals, particularly those who are not employed in the mining sector.
What are the response to the people now, 2 years after the effect, Sela, to these things happening now? What are the locals saying, and what are their views on these projects?
Well, they have welcomed the project, but what they've questioned is the logic behind, or the timing behind this project, saying that did it have to take people to die before government can really respond to some of our challenges and really respond to some of our concerns, saying that to a large extent, even though they are glad that they will be receiving those particular projects, but they are questioning the timing, as I explained earlier, and the logic behind this project, saying that government doesn't have to be reactionary in approaching or in terms of addressing some of these issues, in that they need to come with a systematic plan or a developmental plan all over the country, not only in Marikana, so that things that have happened in Marikana are averted and are avoided going into the future.
Sela, thank you very much for that update. Sela will keep us updated as to what happens in Rustenburg throughout the rest of the day. Of course, we just want to look back. 44 people died during August of 2012. For those left behind, it was very difficult to pick up the pieces of their lives over the last couple of years.
Oh, ina kwanele siswe esimnyama kwanele ma-Afrika amahle sithi nxe komsontsundu siyaluqalekisa olu suku le-16 Agasti.
Since South Africa saw one of its darkest days. 2 years since police opened fire on a crowd of striking mine workers, killing 34 workers outside the Lonmin Platinum mine in Marikana. Saying others, police officers and security guards also had to pay with their lives. Since then, the Farnham Commission of Inquiry launched by government has started probing the deaths of the 44 people. One of Lonmin's shareholders, Cyril Ramaphosa, testified at the commission this week, but as testimonies continue, the lives of those affected remain unchanged. This week, women who lost their loved ones on the day gathered outside the Wonderkop Stadium to share their sorrow and concerns. This woman, who lost her brother in the Marikana massacre, says the 78 people who didn't lose their lives but sustained serious injuries have never been compensated.
4 of my relatives were arrested that day. My brother-in-law, my younger brother, my aunt's son, and my older brother. My brother-in-law lost his sight in his one eye in the chaos and is still working in the mines.
Officers say they are still waiting for the houses' proper sanitation and running water promised to them by Lonmin. There are others in the community who are also tired of waiting for basic services to be delivered.
Here in Kanin, we are very poor. We don't have toilets, we don't have water, and we don't have electricity.
It's not just the community outside of Lonmin in Marikana who are unhappy about the current situation. This man who lost his mother, who was a security guard at the time, says mine workers are still not satisfied.
I could say we're still unhappy, as nothing has changed for non-permanent workers.
These women say they hope Lonmin and the police one day admit to being responsible for the deaths of their loved ones, but say that for now they can only focus on the future of Marikana's children.
Yeah, 2 years this week since that fateful day, August 16, 2012. Now we move on. Do you know what you're paying for at your local supermarket? A recent investigation by the National Consumer Commission found that chain stores have been involved in the unlawful alteration of, replacing, and even the removing of food labels. Most of these stores are well known by consumers. The Commission found that 84 of these stores in Mpumalanga and Northwest were tampering with food items. Expired tins of baby formula, for instance, were sold at the same price. Some stores went as far as erasing the labels with a marking fluid. Now these stores have claimed that it was simply human error. This could be very severe to consumers, as this may cause illness, diarrhea, food poisoning, can even be fatal. So an unsuspecting customer like yourself and myself, what can we do? To tell us a little bit more, to tell us what we can do, National Consumer Commission Deputy Commissioner Tezi Mabuza. Very good morning to you, ma'am. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning to you too.
Ma'am, I'd like you to maybe give us a little bit of background of this investigation and what you found and how alarming it should be for consumers out there.
What we had done is we had conducted some inspections. They were actually probed or kind of like caused by some of the returns that we had received from other provinces relating to return policies. And when we looked at those areas, we looked at some of the items that people were returning, and we realized that the best way for the Commission to deal with this is to go out there and do investigations and see that what consumers are complaining about is really true. The areas that we were looking at in this area, it was to look at the safe quality goods, and then also to look at the issues of product labeling. Those were the two provisions that we were looking at. And what we had found is that in terms of the labeling of products, there were violations wherein there were supposed to be, in most cases, two dates: your manufacturing date and your sell-by date or your expiry date. In most of the goods that we found is that some of the goods never had the dates. That left the retailers on their own to affix dates wherein they could. And in areas wherein dates were fixed, you would find that some of the retailers would deface those with either marking pens or replace them with other attachments as well. But then what was also really problematic was the issue of safety, wherein when goods have expired and the labels have been defaced, it would mean that now whatever that is being sold to customers, it's never safe. And then also the quality thereof is being compromised because the shelf life has already expired.
What is your message then out to the consumers right now who are busy doing their shopping and will be looking and seeing some of these scenarios play out in front of their eyes? What's the message to the consumer, and what recourse do they have? Who should they contact?
The consumers have got a right, actually. The first port of entry is at the retail store. When you are at the store doing your shopping and then you pick up something in the shelf that has expired, notify the manager to say this has expired, but that doesn't give you a recourse straight away. But then if it happens that from your side you picked up an item and then when you got home, you realize that the goods, that item has expired or the sell-by date has been reached. You've got a right to return it and then it will be replaced. Most of our retailers would normally oblige and replace that. But then you would find that sometimes alterations would ensue wherein when I return something, I might have maybe lost a receipt or something like that. But then if there's proven a date that there is a package that you bought but you lost a receipt, I think there's some footages in the store wherein you would be saying, I bought from this counter, then they can trace the time and still look at the receipt and see if maybe the item has been sold or bought from that retailer. But sometimes it happens that now the person, there's no proof or any other thing, then you'd find that the consumer would be at a loss. Yeah. But then it might happen that some of the retailers really, they are adamant. They would tell you that you can't return goods. And in this instance, would advise a consumer, the first area would be to go to your provincial. All provinces have consumer provincial offices wherein you can lodge your complaint. Then they will be able to facilitate, to communicate with the retailer and then facilitate that resolution so that you can get a refund or a replacement. If that doesn't happen normally, then they will escalate that to us to now probe an investigation around that. But then most of the retailers, as you know, that especially the chain stores, they are willing, if you engage them, to say, this is what has happened, then they will gladly replace.
Finally, what are you going to widen this inspection that you're doing, and then what are you going to do about repeat offenders and retailers who don't want to change their ways?
This actually is one of the random inspections that would normally conduct. We do that sporadically. Almost every quarter would go out and select provinces and then would look at items or at provisions of the Act that we felt that maybe we have seen a spiral in terms of the number of complaints around a particular provision. Then we would go out there to make sure that we stem out, we force retailers to comply. But then this one, in terms of the issue of the expiry dates, the correct labeling and the provision of quality goods would ensure that we do that as often as we can and as much as we can. And then we'll also sensitize our provincial officers. We'll partner with them in certain instances so that we have enough manpower to go out there and ensure that consumers are protected and they are safe.
Thank you very much for joining us today and giving us a little insight. That's the National Consumer Commission's Deputy Commissioner, Tezi Mabuza, giving us a little insight as to what's happening with this latest inspection and what they found. Let's take a quick look at what's been happening on social media, what you're talking about today. What are you? Linukutla Similani says, at first it was Ebola, now an anthrax scare rampant in Durban. Yes, that's an anthrax scare has been reported widely. Rialabocha Mashiani says, any reason, scientific, logistical, whatever, why all anthrax suspect substances are packaged in envelopes? Curiosity for gifts. A little bit of humour there. I Love Durban says, police are still awaiting reports on the exploding package in Durban. Hashtag anthrax. Oh, that's interesting. And there you have a picture that's incoming. Let's roll it up a little bit more. There we go. Same one. Breaking news. Exploding package in Durban may contain anthrax. That's from here. That's from yesterday. I Love Durban sending that through. Yeah, an anthrax scare in Durban. There's also an Ebola scare off Richards Bay. Seems to be in the age of social media. We've got lots and lots of scares around us. Let's take a look now at the front pages of the world. In Europe, the Times reporting that the United Kingdom is planning to help save 30,000 starving refugees trapped by jihadists in northern Iraq. Papers in Australia also looking at that story with a photo of Iraq's Yazidi refugees crossing the border there. And still in Australia, we see that papers are still paying tribute to actor Robin Williams, who took his own life earlier this week at the age of 63. Time now for us to take a short little break. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News.
BMW M4 Coupe. One with the machine.
Welcome back. You're at Newsroom here on SABC News. Special permits that allow legal Zimbabwean immigrants to stay and work in the country under the dispensation of the Zimbabweans Project will expire in December this year. But Home Affairs Minister Melissa Gigaba announced this week that they can apply for a 3-year extension now. In 2009, the project issued more than 200,000 special permits that allowed Zimbabweans already in South Africa who did not have any visas to stay here and work. Now, from October, qualifying Zimbabweans can apply for the new permits that would expire in December 2017. Joining us today is the head of the Refugee and Migrants Rights Program at Lawyers for Human Rights, Kajal Ramjatan Akio. Very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Evan.
Lawyers for Human Rights have cautiously welcomed this decision. Give us your stance on the matter and why this cautiousness about it.
Yes, we are very pleased that the Department of Home Affairs has decided to extend the process for further 3 years. We are concerned, however, that the new permits, which will be applicable from 1 October, are only for Zimbabweans who were previously successful in applying for the DZP, which was issued in 2010. So it does limit the numbers of people who can apply, and it doesn't take into consideration people who were rejected in 2010, and for very technical reasons, such as that they were not able to produce passports, which was not their fault. It was the slowness of the Zimbabwean government in producing these passports, which resulted in their applications being rejected.
Migration control and protecting our borders and the like has been a key focus in the last few months, and all will be stepped up. Do you think that this is part of a step in the right direction, or what are your views?
It is definitely a step in the right direction. Knowing who is entering your country, documenting them, issuing them with permits is certainly a very good means toward good migration control. So this is a very positive step from the Department of Home Affairs.
What is this new permit? What does it entail?
So it's called the DSP, which is the Zimbabwean Special Permit. It will be eligible only Zimbabweans who were successful in the 2010 DZP permit will be eligible to apply for this particular permit. It will be valid for a period of 3 years. Applications will open 1 October this year and will close on the 31st of December. And there are a number of requirements, including valid passports and proof of employment, but also you would need to produce some kind of SARS clearance certificate and a police clearance certificate.
What are your concerns then with this process that has to be followed?
We're concerned with the short duration of the application period. From our recollection in 2010, the period was not long enough and had to be extended at least twice in order to accommodate the nearly 300,000 applications. This particular process will be an online application. We are not convinced that all these 300,000 Zimbabweans have access to online facilities to complete and lodge these application forms. So there's certainly some practical difficulties, which we have not yet received any direction from Home Affairs about how these will be catered for.
December 2017, it seems as if the goalposts have just been moved a little bit. What happens after the 3-year period is over?
Yes.
It seems as if we seem to be passing it on continually.
Yes. Well, first we must go back to 2010. In 2010, we were told that the DZP would be renewable for a further period. We were now told this week that the DZP is no longer renewable. This is a new dispensation, which is not linked to the DZP, and it will only be applicable for 3 years, and thereafter this process will end. And what Home Affairs is saying to us now is that Zimbabweans will then fall into the normal processes where they'd have to apply for permits in terms of the Immigration Act, which we know for people like domestic workers and gardeners will be impossible because there is no space for them in the Immigration Act for low-skilled and unskilled employment.
Finally, how do you see it play out in the workplace, dealing with unemployment and housing and other jobs and that sort? How do you see this?
Certainly. I mean, the impact on employment we don't see as being very substantial. These people are in the country. They've been here already for at least 4 years. They've been in employment for 4 years. They're not taking new jobs. They're not taking jobs that South Africans have held. They are here. They're continuing with their employment. Their impact on the employment and the labour market is going to be quite minimal.
Well, that sounds very positive. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. The head of the Refugee and Migrants Rights Program at Lawyers for Human Rights, Kajal Ramjathan-Keo, joining us this morning. Let's now take a quick look at what you are on about on social media at the moment, or this morning, or in the last 24 hours. At SABC Newsroom, of course, is where you can get in contact with us. Bishop Myers says people in Gaza are tweeting advice on how to handle tear gas to American citizens. You can't make this Ferguson, says Bishop. Abed says the right of having a seaport and an airport built in Gaza is a right that Israel has robbed the Palestinians of, I would think you would say. This won't last, says. Paris, Chanel says Palestinians send solidarity and advice to Ferguson protesters on how to protect themselves from tear gas. And there we have a picture. Is that the US at night? Saddest photo yet from the ISS. We can actually see explosions and rockets flying over Gaza. That's very worrying indeed, and not a good picture. There you have another picture incoming. Move it up. It looks like a mosque praying in the shadows of their destroyed mosque. Yes, buildings can collapse. Belief in your faith cannot. There you have a picture of another destroyed mosque on the Gaza Strip. It's only a 40-kilometer strip of land, and it's being bombed to smithereens. Now, last week we spoke about the skills shortage in math and science being a powerful threat to South Africa's ability to innovate and grow as a competitive, knowledge-based economy. with the final matric exams around the corner now. We are joined today by one of Educate Partners, which is an innovative public-private partnership between corporate and financial institutions who've stepped in to tackle the problem head-on. Educate is a nationwide matric math and science revision campaign which uses Ster-Kinekor cinemas as educational theatres of learning. These sessions cover the entire matric curriculum and are aimed at preparing disadvantaged matrics for their examinations. Now, to tell us more about the work Educate does, we're now joined by Spusiso Kumalo, Capitec's Head of Corporate Affairs. How do you end up on TV with this program today, Squire?
Morning, Evan, and thanks for having us here. Capitec is sponsoring the Educate program. We're in partnership with Prime Stars, who really are the coordinators of the program. This program launched last week. It's a program that really has been running for a few years now, and really the purpose of the program is to prepare matriculants for the final exams. So it's a 10-week maths and science revision using the Ster-Kinekor cinemas.
Yeah, tell us about this rollout. I'm very interested in this, and talk about the response from schools and learners and so forth to this. So I think it might be quite exciting then.
Yeah, it is quite exciting, and I'm quite pleased. Firstly, that other corporates are coming on board. So it's not only Capitec. We're in there with BHP Bulletin, we're in there with Samsung, and the response really has been quite fantastic. The schools are participating, they're coming to the cinemas, and I think the most important thing is the learners themselves.
Yeah.
When you see the learners eager to learn, eager to understand, it is nerve-wracking, going through that process just before you write your final exams, and to see them participating and, taking in the knowledge, I think that's really, what
we're a country that needs engineers, they say, and need people to build things and manufacture things and so forth. Do you feel that this sector of business is stepping up to the plate and trying to assist in improving our skill set as a country in their operations, really?
I think the way to look at it even is to say the education system provides raw materials for the corporate or the work system. So we are part of the system. It is not a system that belongs to government. And, it takes a partnership between government and private sector in terms of improving the quality of education, improving the quality of the pass mark, improving the quality of... In fact, what it does is when you do maths and science, your options when you get to university are much wider, which is exactly what we want, which is what we think South Africa actually needs.
It's very interesting that you're going the route of the big centres and the response that's going. But tell us, you've relaunched Educate last week. Tell us about the launch, and then what are the sort of short-term wins you guys are looking at?
I think the launch, like you said, yes, the launch was last week. And I think it was just an event to get all the sponsors together and to also get the government representatives and to get other corporates and other stakeholders together. And in terms of the program itself, yes, we are in the major centres. But further to that, we're also providing DVDs to the schools that are not in areas where Ster-Kinekor is available. So it really is covering a huge sector in terms of the education system. And I think that's really what makes this such a special program.
We all have to chip in to make it work in the end. We are South Africa. It's what I tell my friends all the time. We are South Africa. We have to make the contribution.
And certainly, I think there has been this myth that education is something that is the responsibility of government. And I think what we're trying to say is that everybody is responsible for the quality of education, and we all need to do our part to make it work.
I could not agree more. And parents, if you're watching at home, please help with this program. Help your children have a fantastic result at the end of the year. The country needs it. Before I go, I know the matrics aren't watching now because they'll be at school, but where can they get hold of you?
Well, I think the best way to get hold of us is through our website, www.capitecbank.co.za. we've got a section there on our corporate social investment programs.
Yep.
This is one of the many programs that we actually are involved in the education sector. And from there, they'll be able to get our details. They can email us. If there's a school out there that's not part of this program and they want to be part of this program, they can email us. The program will be available again next year and the year after. So if they didn't make it to this year, they can always come back next year.
Fantastic. That sounds like very positive news. Spusiso Khumalo, Capitec's head of corporate affairs, telling us, well, what we all really should be doing. You should all be chipping in with this perceived education problem we have in South Africa. Parents, teachers, government, business are stepping in. Everyone wants a better future for all of us. Thank you, Spusiso, for joining us here today.
Thank you.
Well, let's take a quick look at what's happening on our Facebook page. Today, you will see there that the Farnham Commission of Inquiry will continue this morning, where more presentations by lawyers and families of the 44 people who died during the August 2012 unrest will be heard. You will also see that President Jacob Zuma has warned against fake qualifications and says applicants who misrepresent their qualifications will not be allowed to join the public service. And read more on Israel and Palestine's renewed truce that got off to a shaky start today, with rockets from Gaza slamming into Israel and Israel retaliating with more airstrikes. You can find all of these stories and more on our Newsroom Facebook page. Now, before we go to a break, sad news yesterday broke as Africa's last polar bear died in the Johannesburg Zoo. Wang, the bear, had to be put down due to liver and heart failure. Wang, who was born in 1984, arrived at the zoo in 1986 here in Johannesburg as part of a conservation exchange program with a zoo in China. His partner, 27 years, GB, died of natural causes in January earlier this year. Very sad news. Must have died of a broken heart. Time for a short break. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News.
BMW M4 Coupe. One with the machine.
Welcome back. You're with Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a look at the top stories this morning. A suspect arrested in connection with the kidnapping and death of 3-year-old Cuban van Wyk is expected to appear on a charge of murder in the Boksburg Magistrates Court either today or tomorrow. Cuban was abducted from his home in the Ramaphosa informal settlement in Reiger Park on the Gauteng's East Rand a week ago. His partially burnt body was discovered on a mine dump in the area over the weekend. This meanwhile, the family of 3-year-old Luke Tibbetts, who was shot in the head by a stray bullet while sitting on his mother's lap, says government needs to do more if it's serious about eradicating crime in Westbury, Johannesburg. The toddler's memorial service was held last night.
We need more law enforcement in our communities. We need them to be on every street corner. We need them to raid our houses. They need to be relevant in our communities.
The Farnham Commission of Inquiry continues in Centurion today. More presentations by lawyers and families of the 44 people who died during the August 2012 Marikana unrest will be heard. Yesterday, the families demanded answers over the deaths of their loved ones. Transformation and development of mining communities came under the spotlight at the third mining Lekgotla being held in Midrand. The Lekgotla continues today as African Union Chair Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is expected to address delegates. Moving to Africa, a second leading Sierra Leone doctor has succumbed to the Ebola epidemic sweeping across West Africa. In Nigeria, a member of the West African regional body ECOWAS has become the third person in Nigeria to die of the Ebola fever. The country has reported 8 cases of Ebola, which has so far killed more than 1,000 people across 4 West African countries. In international news, a renewed truce between Israel and the Palestinians to temper a 5-week-old war got off to a shaky start this morning, with rockets from Gaza reportedly slamming into Israel and Israel retaliating with airstrikes. There were no reported casualties. The Gaza hostilities have killed more than 1,900 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and 67 on the Israeli side. Then lastly, Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff has declared 3 days of official mourning for presidential candidate Eduardo Campos and 6 crew members after they were killed in a plane crash yesterday. The deaths prompted a wave of mourning across the country, throwing the October election and local financial markets into disarray.
You're just a kid. You don't have the faintest idea.
Now he always had a smile on his face. How could he have been down that he thought suicide was the only solution for him? That has been the general response all over the world this week after the news of actor Robin Williams' death. Depression, the unseen killer, can get to any one of us.
The whole works, right? I bet you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel. You've never actually stood there and looked up at that beautiful ceiling.
Now, yes, social media sites were abuzz soon after the news of actor-comedian Robin Williams' death. One comedian, Jason Manford, took to Twitter and urged people to seek help for depression, saying that if depression could kill one of the world's greatest funny men, it can get to any one of us at any time. Now, joining us to further this discussion is Dr. Annie Tamani, a mental health expert and lecturer from the University of Johannesburg. Annie, welcome for joining us on Newsroom.
Thank you very much for welcoming me.
Let's just start off. What tragic news this week, and it's called the unseen killer. Is this really what we're dealing with?
Yes, because depression is unseen. The fact that people are walking around who don't know that they have depression, and it's difficult for them to actually seek help. Sometimes, who knows that they have depression?
What are the main factors that contribute to depression?
It's actually difficult. There's no simple explanation for the causes of depression, but there are causes which contribute to factors that contribute to depression, like psychological factors, genetic factors, and some of the factors. Things like life stresses in life, major trauma, financial loss when people lose their jobs and things like that, and have an impact on a person, and this can cause depression. And other things, it's like illnesses, cancer and people who suffer from immunocompromised illnesses. There are physical changes happening there, and this also can, trigger depression sometimes. And people who are in low socioeconomic status, who are employed, don't have living in poverty. These are the things that are affecting us on a daily basis, and people are suffering from depression because they don't know what to do with themselves.
Now, SADC revealed that there are up to 23 cases, suicide attempts, let me just make sure, suicides taking place daily in South Africa. Is this accurate?
Yes, this is accurate, which means that then in 24 hours, people are trying to kill themselves, because the major reason for suicidal thoughts is that people are not willing to come forward to say they're struggling with what is going on in their life. So the better thing is to suicidal attempt.
Now, as far as the numbers are concerned, are we talking about more men, female, teenagers, adults?
What I know for sure is that depression affects men and women equally, and also children. And 17% of these are children, and 1 in 3 for women is reported that can suffer from postnatal depression, and more women are more likely to get depression because of other hormonal factors and the intensity of stresses that they go through sometimes.
Now, there was a recent study that also revealed that there's been an increase in the use of antidepressants, South Africans using antidepressants. Is this true, and is antidepressants the solution?
It is true, it's globally happening that there's an increased use of antidepressants because of, I feel that maybe people are becoming more aware of the emotional status, that they're seeking treatment for that. So, and it's not the only solution. There are other things that can be done through like therapy for depression.
Now, the symptoms, what are the symptoms you need to look out for? And as a family member, if you see somebody struggling,
I think it's important for the families to look out for when there are changes in mood, things like irritation, aggressive outburst, and thought processes like when people keep on saying, I'm going to do something to myself, I'm not feeling well, prolonged sadness and mood swings, and energy levels also, because now with energy levels, people say, no, I don't want to go to work, I don't want to do this, this is not worth it, I don't want to wake up. And, and the major one is the recurrent suicidal thoughts.
Then how do you, as a person, address this when you see this in another person?
I think it should be our responsibility as a community and family members and in the workplace also to say if there is a change in a person's behavior, in their mood, in their behavior, in their thinking process and their energy levels, that we start saying, please get assistance so that you can get better.
Well, Dr. Annie Tamani, thank you so much for joining us this morning and talking in the light of legendary actor Robin Williams' death this week due to depression, the unseen killer. Now, Eben is standing by with our digital team to see what they've been up to this week.
Yeah, digital team have been dealing with lots of different stories. Of course, one of those have been the untimely death, some would say, of Robin Williams. A very sad day, but Bongi Mokhali, news production editor at our digital platforms, here with us. Morning, Bongi.
Morning.
Before we go to Robin Williams, which is really a very, very sad story and a real problem that's in our society at the moment. It's a silent killer people aren't talking about. But let's deal with the news of the day. Paulo Jordan's resignation from the National Executive Committee in Parliament has really been one of the big talking point stories so far, more than a week now. How did we cover it?
All right. Well, everyone was a bit taken aback, obviously, because he always seemed like such a principled man with a lot of integrity. So when it came to light that actually he had lied about his qualifications, his doctorates, for over 30 years, everyone was really just, I was floored completely. So we've got the story there. We did a lot of sourcing from Radio AM Live. They had interviews with the ANC's Gwede Mantashe earlier on this week, who said, well, the ANC, they were taken aback, but let's give the man the space. Let's just let this thing play itself out. And that, well, they were also still, I think, waiting to hear from him, but that he had resigned and they would take further steps to see whether he would end up leaving the party indeed. They also spoke to the journalist from the Sunday Times, Gareth van Onselen, who was the one who broke the story, and they were asking him, well, what was the motivations for this? And he went into saying that, well, it actually arose as a discussion on that perhaps some qualifications for some people might not be what they seemed to be. And we had comment also from Stephen Friedman, which we've gotten people can listen to, who says, well, you know what? There's lots of people who are currently in Parliament who perhaps shouldn't be there, who've done far worse things. This lie that Paulo Jordan told essentially really hurt him. We might have hurt feelings, but it tore into him more than anybody else. It didn't denigrate anyone else. We've also obviously got to storify, and this is where the South African humour starts to come in. People have been making now jokes about this. It's a serious matter, but we found the ways to make it humorous. We've had people who are saying that, well, the alien stole his PhD. There's other people, I've seen pictures of people who are saying that...
people have too much time on their hands. They really need to get on with their work. South Africa, please get out and work. We can't lose Paulo Jordan out of the South African discourse. It's just not, it's unfathomable really for someone like me with the contribution that he's made. However, let's move on to the other big talking point, Marikana Commission, Cyril Ramaphosa, Dali Mpofu. The sense that I got after, you've got to tell me what the sense was you guys got, but the sense I got was that Dali lost his temper and thus lost the argument.
It might seem that way. But for a lot of people, there's still, when you go to social media, it is still an aspect of, Cyril, we don't think you're telling everything, and we do believe you have blood on your hands. You remember he was heckled, and we've got all of those live streams. If you go to our YouTube channel, if there's anything that you still like to see, the emotions are high, and people feel badly about this. And Mr. Ramaphosa has made some concessions regarding responsibility. People have taken off a bit exception to perhaps his statement that we are all equally responsible for we all have our share to take in what happened in Marikana, with some people saying, well, I don't recall calling any minister. But, you know, it was a case of when you had a look at those exchanges, there might have been perhaps a bit of a loss of control on the part of Dali Mpofu. So,
yep, you lose your temper, you lose any argument. That is how it works, especially in front of an entire nation watching. Let's talk now about Robin Williams. How sad is that? They are, you know, the one thing that stands out for me this week is that the people who appear the happiest and who make you feel the happiest are often, in their own capacity, the saddest ones among us.
I think this is exactly what we've seen with what's happened with him. You know, somebody who makes you laugh, somebody who seems to always be laughing, but you're never really aware of the demons that torment them. And here we have an example. I think this came out of the blue for everybody. So what we've got is a story that we did on him, and we've got a photo gallery, because when you have a look, you always see this smile on his face, and actually the smile translates to his eyes too, but now it seems like perhaps there was something that was just hidden there that we weren't quite aware of. Huge outpourings of emotion internationally and also nationally, but there was a taking of people took the Academy that does the Oscars to task regarding a tweet that they sent out. The Academy tweeted, "Genie, you're free." He had been the voice of the genie in Aladdin, and they were saying that this appears to be glorifying suicide. So there's been a bit of controversy about that.
Everything is a controversy these days. I'm just sad that we lose one of the great actors of this generation. People will only talk about this in 20 years when we look back, the kind of movies that he made and the kind of message that he was all about. Finally, you guys have been out and about at Digital News quite a bit. You've got 30 seconds to tell us about Women's Day, the Mandela Lecture, and Ubikopi.
Okay, Women's Day, it's all up on our site in a special report. You can have a look at the recording of the stream, the address by the President. The Mandela Lecture was delivered by Chile's President, Michelle Bachelet, and it was under the theme Building Social Cohesion Through Active Citizenship. You can have a look at that. You can also see all of the other lectures that have been held. And Opikopi, the Alternative Musical Fest. I know very little about alternative music, but those who went there seem to enjoy it a lot.
Catherine was there. She did a bit. I hope she didn't embarrass our brand while she was there. She was at Opikopi. Young and frivolous is what they call the up-and-coming ones. That's where we wrap it today. Newsroom's been broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park in Johannesburg. We're live every weekday morning between 9 and 10. Highlights rebroadcast at 2 in the afternoon, then a full repeat at 5 a.m. the following morning. We're also streaming live on YouTube at that time, with the whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We just love it in the morning.